Today we are going to continue talking about the elements of the novel in Robinson Crusoe. Today we are going to deal with plot, theme, and point of view. Before that, I will ask you some questions about the previous lecture. You remember we have talked about setting and characters in Robinson Crusoe. Let me ask you this question. What are the effects of setting on Crusoe? Or, what's the reflection of setting on the character of Robinson Crusoe? We have 5 effects. The first one, he becomes brave. He has more courage. The second one, he discovers his God, or he discovers his real religion. He understands human relations. 4, he believes in fate. 5, he becomes open-minded. If I ask you, what are the effects of setting on Crusoe, you can choose any one of these 5 effects. He becomes brave. He discovers his God because of this important setting. He understands human relations because he lives in isolation. He believes in fate. He becomes open-minded. We can choose one of these effects on this character. Another question, who is the major character in this novel? Crusoe, Spaniard, or the widow? Who is the major or the protagonist of this novel? Yes, that's right, Crusoe. So we have the protagonist or the major character of this novel. Yes, Crusoe. Which character stands for European goodness? Friday, the Portuguese captain, or Cosori? Which character stands for European goodness? Friday, the Portuguese captain, or Cosori? Yes, that's right. B, the Portuguese captain. Who is the first non-white character in the English novel? Who is the first non-white character in the English novel? A, Crusoe. B, the widow. C, Friday. So we have A, Crusoe. B, the widow. C, Friday. Non-white. He is a kind of prototype of the non-white character. Yes, that's right, Friday. Which character is considered flat? Which one of these is considered flat? Crusoe, the widow, Friday. Again, A, Crusoe. B, the widow. C, Friday. Which one of these is considered flat? That's right. The widow is a kind of a flat character. Now let's see today's lecture. We said that Robinson Crusoe and the main elements of the novel, plot, theme, and point of view. Let's start with the plot. Robinson Crusoe is an entertaining novel, so we can sense entertainment in this novel. Readers enjoy reading such kind of action novel. Remember, this novel can be described differently. We can say it's a realistic novel, or we can say it's an action novel. Robinson Crusoe is an entertaining novel. Readers enjoy reading such kind of action novel. Robinson Crusoe has a straightforward plot. So we have straightforward plot. This is the most important idea of the plot. We have straightforward plot. It's simple to follow the development of action in this novel. It's about a person or one character who wants to go to the sea despite his parents' warning. He has many adventures, but the main adventure is when he becomes on the isolated island as a result of shipwreck. The novel seems as an autobiography of the protagonist, Crusoe, who is the protagonist. It's a kind of autobiography of this hero or this protagonist. The novel seems as an autobiography of the protagonist, Crusoe. It deals with the adventures of him. The plot can be read like this. Crusoe is from a middle-class family. His father wants him to be a lawyer. He doesn't accept his father's advice. He goes on a voyage against his father's will. He faces a lot of complications. He faces a lot of complications and problems after that. During one of his voyages, his ship is damaged and he finds himself on isolated island. He stays in his island for more than 28 years. He supports an English captain who is betrayed by his crew. The captain takes him home to England. So this is the adventure or the main plot of the novel. These are the stages of Robinson Crusoe's plot. The first stage, we have exposition stage. At the beginning of the novel, there is a background for the coming adventures of Crusoe and his refusal to accept traditional way of thinking. He is against many ideas of his society. So from the beginning of the novel, we have a kind of setting the problem of this character, and we have something about his traditional society and the traditional way of thinking of his society. His father wants him to be a traditional lawyer, but this character doesn't accept this advice, and he wants to be a sailor, he wants to be a merchant, he wants to be a different one than a lawyer. This is the exposition stage. The second stage, complications stage. Crusoe wants to go to the sea and doesn't follow the advice of his father. He becomes a merchant. He goes to Brazil and achieves economic success. So he decides to leave England, and he faces a lot of complications during his travel. So we can sense a kind of rising action now. From the exposition stage, we have a platform for background and seeing the characters and especially the protagonist of this novel, Crusoe. Then we have complications. We have what? Rising action, adventures in the sea. He leaves England and starts his adventures. So he wants to travel and buy slaves and bring them back to Brazil. We have another complication. When he comes to Brazil, he starts planting and he has a lot of farms. After that, he decides to travel for another time and to buy slaves and bring them to Brazil to sell them. Now let's see the climax, the top of the plot. We have the climax, the peak of the action. Climax stage. In his voyage to buy slaves, his ship is wrecked. He is the only survivor who reaches an isolated island. He is alone in this island. So his ship is damaged. He becomes alone. he succeeds to survive, but he finds himself in this isolated island. This is the climax of the plot. Now let's see resolution stage. We have, as we said, we have rising, escalating action. Now we are going to go back to solutions and finding solutions for his problems. After reaching the island, Crusoe begins to collect some objects from the damaged ship. Then he makes his home and finds his food. This is a solution for his existence on the island. He builds a home for himself, then he finds his food. He tries to leave the island, so he is trying to find another solution to leave the island. He creates a canoe, a small boat. It's small and can't be used for long journey. He accepts his fate. He tries to find solutions for his problems with cannibals. There is another kind of problem. He faces some cannibals in his island. He tries to find solutions for his problems with cannibals, food, going back to England, and other problems. Finally, he goes back to England and becomes wealthy. Let's go back and see the stages of the plot again. We have exposition stage, then we have complications stage, climax, and the last one we have solution, or we have resolution stage. Again, we have the problem. We have a problem with this character. He wants to find his individual identity. He tries not to follow the instruction of his society and his father. He leaves England, complications, and he has a lot of problems in his travels. Climax stage, he finds himself in isolated island. Resolution stage, he finds some solutions for his problems, for his shelter, for his food, etc. Finally, he gets back to his home. So, resolution stage, after reaching the island, Crusoe begins to collect some objects from the damaged ship. Then he makes his home and finds his food. He tries to leave the island. He creates a canoe. It's small and can't be used for long journey. This is a scientific thinking of his canoe. He accepts his fate. He tries to find solutions for his problems with cannibals, food, going back to England, and other problems. Finally, he goes back to England and becomes wealthy. This is the last or the final solution for his problem. The plot is very clear in the original title of the novel. The original title is, we have an original title for this novel at that time. It was very long, by the way. The novel was called like this, not Robinson Crusoe or The Adventures of Robinson Crusoe. The original title was, let's see this original title. The original title is The Life and Strange Surprising Adventures of Robinson Crusoe of York, Mariner, who lived 8 and 20 years all alone in an uninhabited island on the coast of America, near the mouth of the great river of Ornoak, having been cast on shore by shipwreck, wherein all the men perished but himself, with an account how he was at last as strangely delivered by pirates. Imagine this title summarizes the plot of the novel. Again, we have exposition, the life and strange surprising adventures of Robinson Crusoe of York, mariner. He is from York. He is a mariner. He wants to be a sailor. We have another idea about his origin. We have he is from York, which is a state or a region in England. We have a lot of this, and we have the complication stage. After that, we have isolated on the island. We have the climax, which is having been cast on shore by shipwreck, wherein all the men perished but himself, with an account how he was. This is a resolution of his problem, with an account how he was at last as strangely delivered by pirates. So it's a kind of summary of the novel. Defoe focuses his attention in his plot of this novel on two strategies. We can sense two strategies in this novel. We have the first one, realistic events, which are similar to real life or based on facts. In this strategy, we can see that Defoe focuses his attention on real life, and he bases his story on real story of, you remember, Scottish Alexander Selkirk. He bases his story on the adventure of this Scottish traveler. So it is near to real event. We have realistic events. There is a close relationship between the adventures of Crusoe and these adventures of the real people who lived during that age. Even the story is based on a real story. It is a real story. There are a lot of events that approach the real life. Most of the events are close to real events and to real life. The other technique, descriptive style. So the first one, again, we have realistic events or realistic approach, realistic style. The second one, we have descriptive style. He describes a lot of things in detail. We have a lot of descriptions all over the novel. There are long elaborations all over the novel from the exposition stage till the end, because Defoe wants to unfold the secrets of strange surroundings of Crusoe. So again, there are long elaborations all over the novel from the exposition stage till the end, because Defoe wants to unfold the secrets of surrounding of Crusoe. The plot moves slowly to have a full picture of the adventures in this novel. We have a slow-moving plot in order to get close to the descriptions of places, things, events. We have a close description of these things. So we have a slow-moving plot. Now let's see the theme. So again, if you want to summarize the ideas about the plot, we have straightforward plot. We have two techniques used by Defoe, descriptive and realistic. And remember that this is very important. We have a slow-moving plot. And don't forget the 4 stages of a plot: exposition stage, complications, climax, and resolution. Now let's see the theme. There are many different themes in this novel. The most important ones are the following. Now let's have some of these important themes in this novel. The first one, or the most important theme, is individualism. There is a desire of a human being to fulfill himself. So we have a desire for achieving individual identity or for achieving individualism. Crusoe is interested in obtaining his individuality through many aspects. So we can follow the character of Crusoe, and we can see how does he, if I ask you, how does Crusoe achieve his individualism or individuality? We are going to follow this. A, he wants to be more civilized and educated than other people. So we have a kind of self-civilization, self-education. We have self-civilization and development. He wants to educate, civilize himself. He wants to be wealthy and expands his property. This is a kind of economic individualism. The first one is a kind of self-achievement or self-civilization. The other one, we have economic individualism. He wants to be very rich. C, he wants to have power and control over his surroundings, so we can sense a kind of self-independence. He wants to be free and independent. He doesn't want to follow the instructions and the advices from other people. He wants to achieve his self-independence. So again, we can sense individualism in the character of Crusoe. He can achieve self-individuality or his individuality through this. We can sense that through this. Crusoe makes use of everything around him in the island. He discovers nature and domesticates wild animals such as goats and parrots. He saves food for coming time. He doesn't wait for help and leaves working. He starts from the beginning of his existence on the island to think of himself. So, he thinks of himself from the early beginning of the novel. Being alone on the island doesn't make Crusoe like other cannibals. He is aware of his humanity and social status. In the island, he is organized. For example, he has a kind of calendar. You remember, he makes his calendar on the cross. He has a kind of calendar to feel the time and state his experiences. He wears clothes. He keeps his mind working. He describes things precisely. For example, he tells us the period of time that he spends in cutting a tree to make his boat. It takes 20 days to cut a tree and 14 to clear its branches. So he is a kind of self. Yes, he achieves his self-independence by himself. We have self-civilization in this novel. And we have the general theme, which is individualism. Now let's see another theme, colonial theme. There is a general tendency of slavery in this novel. Crusoe is a kind of colonizer who underestimates other people from other places. So we have a kind of racial discrimination between different nations or different people from different places. Crusoe is a kind of colonizer. He is the character or the person in power, in control, who underestimates, he looks down to other people from other places. Such as, we can see he looks down at other people from places such as Africa, America, and even other people from Europe who are not British. Crusoe is a prototype of the Englishman at that time, where England obtains great power over other countries. So Crusoe represents the real power of his country, of England. So he represents colonial power of England. He has ambitions to get control over other people in his island. Crusoe teaches Friday to call him master. So we can sense that Crusoe teaches Friday to call him master before teaching him anything. So before starting with teaching him anything, he teaches him to call him master. So we have a kind of slavery. Master, slave. On the contrary, Friday is a symbol of the colonized, the other side. So Friday is a symbol of the colonized native who suffers social injustice and imperialism. We have imperial power in this novel. We have a kind of nation, yes, who wants to control all the surrounding nations. Crusoe considers Friday as a servant, not as a friend. Friday lives with Crusoe for a long time, so it should be a kind of relation, a kind of a friendship relation between them. That is not the case. We have a relationship between Friday and Crusoe. This relationship is a kind of slave and master. The English people think that they have better qualities and rank than other people. Crusoe wants to bring order to disorder. We can sense the theme of order and disorder under colonial power. This is his high purpose of killing some of the cannibals and at the same time educating one of them. So we have killing of some cannibals, and on the same time we have what? Educating one of the cannibals, who is Friday. Now let's see another theme, the theme of social contact. Crusoe's social contact with the Portuguese captain brings him wealth and happiness. So we can sense the social contact brings happiness. At the beginning of his life, the captain takes him to Brazil and Crusoe makes his plantation. He meets him again after 28 years to inform him of his fortune in Brazil. So this captain is a source of good news for Crusoe. Now let's see another theme, religious disillusionment. When Crusoe is alone, he becomes closer to God. The nature around him develops his religious belief. Crusoe develops his religious aspects. He is a religious guide in the island who can instruct other characters. He becomes a kind of religious guide in his island, so we have a kind of religious disillusionment. He understands religion better than before. Another theme, we have family life, sons and parents. There is a kind of original sin. Crusoe and his parents, we have this kind of relationship between Crusoe and his parents. It's a kind of original sin. There is a kind of disobedience between parents and sons. His disobedience to his father's warning, he warned him not to go to the sea. His mother and his father warned him not to go to the sea. Later, Crusoe is punished and sent to the isolated island as a result of his sin. Again, we can sense from this, we have something related to family life. Family life at the age of Daniel Defoe was different or became different than before. We have the relationship between Crusoe and his father, a kind of unbalanced relationship. We don't have strong relationship between the father and the mother, and the other part, which is the son. The son Crusoe disobeys his father. We have a kind of wrong relationship between father and son. So it is a kind of wrong relationship or original sin, we can say. But if we look at this idea from another perspective, Crusoe wants to achieve his individualism. He wants to create himself, to find himself. So I think that we have two ideas about that. Some critics think that Crusoe is right to disobey his father. The other critics say Crusoe should obey his father and he shouldn't go to the sea. Later, Crusoe is punished and sent to the isolated island as a result of his sin. Point of view. Now let's see another element of the novel, which is point of view. We have talked about, you remember, we have talked about themes, plot, and before that in the previous lecture we talked about setting and character. So we have setting, character, plot, theme, and now we are going to take point of view. Defoe writes Robinson Crusoe in the first person point of view. It's totally subjective. It's about private experience of this character of Robinson Crusoe. It's true that the reader has only one source of narration in the novel. There isn't another source of information that can provide the reader with other views about the events. Again, Defoe writes Robinson Crusoe in the first person point of view. It's totally subjective, it's a private experience. It's true that the reader has only one source of narration, only this narrator, the first person narrator, who is Crusoe. It's true that the reader has only one source of narration in the novel. There isn't another source of information that can provide the reader with other views about the events. So we have only one source of information, and we don't have other sources, and we don't have other characters who can add their point of view. We have the point of view of one character. He can judge all the characters and all the events around him. The reader has to see things through the eyes of Crusoe only. The narrator depends on logical thinking in this novel. He has realistic attitude in his description through giving a lot of details. The reader has to trust in this narrator because he has a deep interest to look at the actions and things. So the reader has to trust in this narrator because he has no choice and he has a deep interest to look at actions and things. Therefore, using a first-person narrator is a good technique to deal with this kind of autobiographical events. It's a kind of following the experiences and the adventures of this character. So it's very good to look through the eyes of this character and his adventures. The point of view in Robinson Crusoe expresses the individual experience rather than the collective tradition of the previous kinds of writing. So we have a kind of individual experience of one character, rather than the collective tradition of the previous kinds of writing. In previous kinds of literature and writing, we have collective or objective experience. We have the experience of a group of people, not one of them. The point of view in this novel gives reader the chance to follow the adventures of Crusoe so closely. Since Crusoe reveals his experience through his eyes, there is a kind of trust between the reader and this narrator who introduces the reader and who introduces a new outlook towards understanding life. There is a close relationship between the narrator and the reader. The reasons behind the close relationship between the reader and the narrator are. So, what are the reasons behind the close relationship between reader and narrator? We can sense this in this novel. The reader gets everything in this novel from this narrator, only this narrator, who is Crusoe. So we have a close relationship. This makes the adventures more believable. The narrator, another reason, the narrator is the person who has taken the adventures himself. He is the original source of the information. He undergoes these experiences and these adventures. So he is the best person who can tell us about these adventures. He is not talking about the experience of someone else, but it is his own experience. It is a first-hand experience. There is a positive point of view towards life. In this point of view, there is a positive point of view towards life. Crusoe is optimistic. He doesn't submit to his isolated situation. As a narrator, he looks at things positively and reveals the goodness of life. Hunter, let's have this final quotation. Hunter says that Crusoe finds the power to overcome a hostile world of hunger and sickness. Again, Hunter says that Crusoe finds the power to overcome a hostile world of hunger and sickness, animal and human brutality, even the power to overcome his most dangerous adversary himself. So we can sense the point of view of this narrator. He is optimistic about his life. He finds solutions for his problems, so he is positive and optimistic. Thank you so much. See you next lecture.